Coming up on Business Incorporated. EU and Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa sign €1.6 million financing agreement. International tourism in Ghana likely to dip by 64% in 2020. And Kenya's central bank announces expiry of waivers for mobile money transactions. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwago. Let's get the show started now with the market numbers at intraday. Nigeria's main index continued its bull run, jumping 1.87% at midday, thanks to gains from market heavyweight Dangote Cement. On the flip side, South Africa's JSE index shaved off 2.43%, while the EGX 30 index in Egypt declined 2.50%. Kenya ended Friday's session positive. In the Middle East, all the markets we track were negative at intraday. In the UAE, Dubai's main index declined 3.85%, while the Abu Dhabi index lost 0.79%. Elsewhere in the region, Saudi Arabia's market declined 2.10%, while the Qatari index was lower by 0.44%. And European markets plunged in early morning as investors monitored a fast-spreading new variant of the coronavirus that has shut down much of the UK. Well, Conrad will give us more details there from Frankfurt. Hello, Conrad. Good afternoon. Well, it seems
Good afternoon to you.
Yeah, it seems you're talking to me from the airport.
The Frankfurt airport, and the rules are... Exactly, and the rules are so strict here, so I was not allowed to take off my mask for talking to you.
Absolutely, you just have to wear your mask. That's okay, you just have to keep safe. Anyway, the United Kingdom has been sent into isolation by other European nations like yours, as a new strain of coronavirus has emerged that makes transmission easier. Germany, France, Italy, the Netherlands and Belgium have halted all flights to and from the UK. The French rules also affect channel freight. We've seen the impact on markets. What would this mean for the economy? Perhaps that's why you are at the airport, to monitor how things are moving up there.
Exactly. I've been reporting all day here for our program DW from the Frankfurt airport, talking to people, asking them what it feels like to come from the different countries. Of course, from the UK, there's now a ban on flights. Nobody is arriving here from the United Kingdom. But, people traveling, in terms of the economy, that's only part of the equation. The other one is freight. The disruption of freight transportation between the United Kingdom and the rest of Europe for at least 2 days, that's really significant. And we have to also keep in mind there already were delays before because of the stockpiling by UK companies, which have to get prepared for the possibility of a no-deal Brexit. Their stockpiling caused delays and disruption already between, the continent and Dover, where, freight from the continent arrives via the Eurotunnel or via the ferries. So we already had problems before. Now this has even been further disrupted. And we should also not forget that also German companies are very dependent also on supply chains that still base on the UK. Of course, they too have gotten prepared for a potential no-deal Brexit. But the impact is there, and the nervousness, of course, that we might see a stronger than expected economic downswing.
Yeah, talking about Brexit talk, of course, the trade negotiators missed another key deadline. The European Parliament have said that an agreement must be reached by yesterday in order to ratify a deal before the end of the year. Talks, of course, continues today. What are the crucial points now?
Well, there seem to be, and I have to say seem to be, Chimmy, because, of course, we're not getting many hard facts and many real confirmed news from those trade negotiations. We're getting a lot of statements from behind the scenes. But as it looks at the moment, there are 2 points of contention still. It's fishing rights. The UK wants to ban all French and Belgian fishermen from fishing in the UK's waters, which has been a right for those French and Belgian fishers for centuries. The other, and I think even much more important point in terms of politics, is still the question of a playing a level playing field, an agreement, on a common set of rules of how to do business in the future and how to settle disputes. The Brits absolutely don't want to accept any European jurisdiction on how they do business, but if they want a trade agreement, of course, one also has to agree on what to do in a case of a dispute. This seems the most contentious point and where British politicians find it the most difficult to find a common solution.
And despite today's slump, many stock markets have reached record levels, including Germany. Why is the optimism reflected there still so strong?
You're right, Chimi. Germany's stock index DAX is still not very far away from an all-time high. Of course, the news about those stronger restrictions are making people nervous and concerned, but they don't really basically change the midterm and long-term scenarios. And that's mostly because experts say that the vaccine is still working, even with this new mutation, even with coronavirus that's able to spread faster than before. Even then, the vaccinations are perfectly in place and they're perfectly helpful to help prevent the illness. And that means that also in terms of the expected and hoped for recovery next year, everything remains more or less intact. So people are nervous, markets have reacted nervously, but the hope for a recovery remains in place.
Well, Conrad, it's just 3 days to Christmas. Please be safe so we can have a Merry Christmas. All right, it looks like the FTSE 100 sell-off is settling somewhat after a frenetic first hour of trading in the morning. Well, it's intraday now. Let's hear from Juliana. Hello, Juliana. Good afternoon again. Where is the pound and the equities at the moment after the fall we saw in the morning?
Still in the red at intraday, as to be expected, Chimaze, like we're seeing all across Europe, but particularly in Britain as it deals with a double whammy or a triple whammy of issues at the moment. The FTSE All Shares down 2.99%, FTSE 100 down by 3.01%, and the FTSE 250 is down by 3.48%. In currencies, the British pound also down on the US dollar by 2.26%, down on the euro by 1.33%, and down on the Japanese yen by 1.80%. I mentioned in the morning, one of the major fallers is IAG, International Airlines Group, the owner of British Airways. Their shares slumped 17% this morning. Obviously, this is down to the fact that so many European countries, including Canada, have closed their borders to British passengers. Also, we're seeing a decline in the oil majors. BP down 7% at intraday. Royal Dutch Shell also down 7.3%. Very little festive cheer in Britain today.
It's not looking good there. Anyway, we talked about Boris Johnson's emergency meeting in the morning. What's the update?
No update as of yet. Downing Street didn't actually specify a time that this COBRA meeting would take place. COBRA meetings typically chaired by the Prime Minister and attended by senior government ministers as well as civil servants that are involved in the matter. This matter is to do with the hours-long queues that we're seeing in Dover. In fact, some of the British media have been speaking to some lorry drivers that have been there for 24 hours. This is a major topic of concern. Some are calling it some sort of state of emergency here in Britain, really, because many of those trucks have fresh food. And of course, those fresh foods are now completely spoiled and cannot be used. Not great at a time when we're in the run up to Christmas. And as my colleague was saying there in Frankfurt, we already had this issue with Brexit stockpiling and medicine stockpiling because of the lack of discussions between, well, the lack of movement in the discussions between the EU and Britain. I believe Nicola Sturgeon, I caught a glimpse of what she was saying at her daily press briefing just before I came into the studio. I think that COBRA meeting is going to take place at about 2:30 Nigeria time, 1:30 local time. Is a very fast-moving story here. So I'm sure by that time there should be more updates.
Yeah, talking about fresh food. Now, fresh food transporters boss is asking UK consumers not to stockpile food, that there are Currently, no shortages. Now, this comes after Sainsbury's, the supermarket, this morning warned that there may be gaps on the shelves for some of the most delay-sensitive fresh food imports, such as lettuce, broccoli, and citrus fruits, if the port's blockage is not solved soon. Now, what are you learning about this development?
Well, it's pretty much the same. It's the same topic of what I was just speaking about. But we did just get some breaking news, actually. I do believe the French Transport Ministry has said that they will indeed now open their borders to hauliers. So hopefully, things could potentially get back to normal. But just to bring it back, to just remind our viewers why this is happening, a new strain of COVID-19, a mutant strain. It's something that can pass much more rapidly than the previous strain of COVID-19. It has been found and discovered in Britain. Britain have alerted the World Health Organization. Dozens and dozens of countries have now closed their borders, Hong Kong being the latest country that has banned any flights coming in from Britain. France made a last-minute call last night to not only just ban passengers, but also to ban any hauliers coming in and out. This has led to 24 hours worth of queues. There has been an ongoing row, some of it being really heightened in the media. British MPs are not happy that France have decided to do this, but France have now, just over the past few minutes, opened up the border, and they said they will allow hauliers to travel to and from Dover to Calais. And like you said, panic buying, there is an issue with panic buying. There's an issue with panic buying, particularly in America and Britain. Any talk of a lockdown or any talk of a shortage, people are going out buying whatever they want. It's a shame I can't show you pictures, but, people have been queuing up at some of the big supermarkets. You mentioned Sainsbury's, Britain's second largest supermarket, since 4 o'clock in the morning, trying to get their Christmas dinner. So we've got to be careful in the media, because one thing about the British media is they do like to stoke a story, and that's one of the issues. And Sainsbury's, even though they did say in a statement that they would be concerned about some of their fresh produce, they have actually said that there is no need to be concerned about getting your great British Christmas lunch, that all of the produce they need for Christmas is here. I was listening to one of the haulage experts as well just before I came in here, and they did say that in the run-up to Christmas we'll be fine. We should also be fine with a couple of days after Christmas. So the message really is not to panic. But of course, not if you're Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who has a lot in his in-tray and intraday, Chime.
I know. Well, a little bit of cheering news there. Well, let's continue to track this development, and please stay safe. In October, the International Air Transport Association downgraded its Africa travel forecast for 2020 to reflect plummeting traffic due to the coronavirus pandemic. According to IATA, the continent is expected to hit 30% of 2019 passenger levels, which is significantly lower from the 45% projected in July. That means Africa will see just 45 million travelers this year compared to 155 million in 2019. But is it all doom and gloom? Let's see how this is affecting tourism, not just in Africa, but globally. Matt Kinniger, Associate Practice Lead for Sub-Saharan Africa at Frontier View, joins me now. Hello, Matt. Good afternoon. Good to see you again.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me on the show today.
The COVID-19 pandemic has decimated demand for air travel in Africa, this year. Will African airlines be able to survive and capitalize on the anticipated recovery in air travel next year, even despite this new strain of COVID-19?
Yes, well, it's a good question to ask because it's a very fast-moving situation globally. But in the short term, really, the good news is that we expect the African governments to support some of the major flag carriers globally, especially the big countries like Ethiopia, Kenya, South Africa. I would be very surprised if governments allowed those airlines to collapse because of the coronavirus pandemic. So next year, we will see the major players remain in place, is our expectation. But next year is going to be very tough in terms of competition for African carriers, especially these big ones. So assuming we do see improved travel connections next year, especially with Europe and the Middle East, big European, Middle Eastern airlines are likely to slash their prices to try to attract travelers back to air travel. And so it's going to be a pretty tough year for African carriers next year. So competition is likely to heat up, and it's going to be a lot less friendlier in terms of the competitive landscape in 2021.
Now, looking beyond 2021, what are the longer-term trends shaping the future of the aviation industry in Africa?
So it generally is quite a positive outlook for aviation in Africa in the longer term. And I would say this is for a number of reasons. One is that the African Continental Free Trade Agreement explicitly looks to liberalize air travel between member states of the African Union. And we are already seeing countries sign bilateral agreements to liberalize their airspace based on African Union free trade agreement principles. A good example is between Mozambique and Zimbabwe. So we are seeing more liberalization domestically as well. Countries are liberalizing airspace. Mozambique is a good example again. They have seen prices fall and choice improve as a result of the ending of the monopoly of the domestic carrier, of the national carrier LAM. And we've also seen the rise of low-cost carriers, and this will only accelerate once things get closer back to normal when the coronavirus recedes. And we're also seeing pretty resilient growth, or we had seen resilient growth amongst super connectors like Ethiopian Airlines that has invested in other regional carriers in Malawi and Togo. So really, the story is quite a positive one in the longer term. We expect African air travel to bounce back over the next few years quite resiliently.
Now, the aviation industry is closely linked to the global tourism industry, which has suffered heavily this year. When do you see a recovery in global tourism emerging, and to what extent will domestic African tourism make up for the loss of international tourist arrivals?
So the story, or the outlook for global tourism is probably a little bit less rosy than the outlook for African airlines. We don't expect the global demand for tourism to return to pre-pandemic levels until 2023 or 2024. And so this means in 2021, we are expecting global tourism, including in Africa, to remain at about 50% of the level it was recorded in 2019. So it's going to take a good few years before global tourism recovers. And this obviously will have an effect on the aviation industry. In terms of domestic tourism, to an extent, yes, it will compensate for weak global arrivals. So in South Africa, we have seen a bit of an uptick in domestic tourist accommodation revenues over the last quarter, and this has been driven entirely by domestic tourists. But there's no real substitute for the very high spending European, North American tourists who go to countries like Mozambique, Kenya, South Africa. So the tourism industry will probably suffer for at least the next 12 months until a global vaccine is rolled out on a meaningful scale.
Well, Matt, I'm not going to see you again before Christmas. So Merry Christmas to you and your family. Be well.
And to you too as well.
Stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Ghana Tourism Authority says the country is likely to record a 64% drop in the number of international tourists traveling into the country by the end of the year. According to the report, Ghana received a total of 1.1 million international tourists in 2019. However, as at October 2020, the country had received a total of 300,000 international tourists, a number that is expected to jump to 400,000 by the end of 2020. Airlines, tour operators, travel agents, attraction sites, car hire, restaurants and hotels have all been adversely impacted, with some of these businesses collapsing and others losing their jobs. Meanwhile, the Ghana Tourism Authority says it has collaborated with the Ghana Events Organizers Association to roll out a number of events which will boost tourism during this Christmas period while adhering to all COVID-19 protocols. And the European Union and the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa have signed a €7.6 million financing agreement for the COMESA International Capacity Building Program. The program is aimed at deepening regional integration in Eastern and Southern Africa to enhance effectiveness and efficiency of the COMESA Secretariat in the implementation of the regional cooperation projects and engagement with its member states. The program will support COMESA in the domestication and implementation of regional commitments at member states level and further facilitate stakeholders' dialogue on regional economic integration in the tripartite framework of COMESA, the East African Community and Southern Africa Development Community. And the Central Bank of Kenya has announced that the emergency waivers for mobile money transactions, which were enforced to encourage mobile money transfer over cash transactions in response to COVID-19, will expire on December the 31st, 2020. The regulator explains that from January 1, 2021, payment service providers will end the charges waiver for transactions below 1,000 shillings, replacing it with zero-rated fees for transactions below 100 shillings, while waivers for transfers between mobile money wallets and bank accounts will remain. The central bank says it will oversee charges between savings and credit societies and mobile money platforms in an attempt to integrate the societies with mobile money. Payment service providers will also offer revised pricing structures pegged on choice, efficiency, transparency, affordability, and customer centricity, among other tenets. And that's a wrap on the program. Thank you for watching.